My name is Kevin. I'm with the WCCHN, and I am the Business and Communications Advisor. And I'm here with you tonight to interview Christy Wolf. And Christy Wolf is with ChristyWolfStories.ca. And I have Christina McGuire, who is with Heartbeats Children's Society. And last year at BoostUp, they won the Alumni's pick for their project, the Digital Storytelling Workshop, Stories of Young Adults with CHD. So Christy, it's been a whole year now since your project won right here on our Boost Up stage. So tell everybody, how did it turn out? What happened?
It couldn't have turned out better. I really think that the idea for the workshop sparked a lot of interest, and so once we got the go ahead, we were all very excited, and so we started planning. So we were able to get our 6 storytellers join us for a weekend retreat. We decided that would be the best way to spend some time together, to get to know each other, and to really sort of immerse ourselves in the project. So the workshop lasted a couple of days. We initially had our storytellers, we met online, and we had them sort of talk about what sort of story they would want to bring to the workshop and what they would want to talk about. We guided them through the digital storytelling process. And so when we actually got together in May, we were ready to go. So we had our story circle, and we were able to share a lot of information, a lot of pieces about what was important to them, and giving feedback from each other. And then the weekend was just sort of working on that and getting to know each other, and sort of having an opportunity to reflect on the things. Yeah.
No worries.
So out of that retreat came 6 digital stories. We had 6 storytellers, all of whom had congenital heart disease. There were stories about having a child after being diagnosed with congenital heart disease. And so that experience of being the mom and worrying about what is it like and what's going to happen, and is my medical team on side with this? We had stories about growing up with congenital heart disease, and that idea of sometimes people thinking that it was going to be okay, and that you were lucky because you got to miss certain things out of school, and then you ended up kind of sharing more about what the background of what it looks like to actually grow up with congenital heart disease. We had people talking about finding community with Heartbeats. And so it was really interesting because although we brought 6 adults with congenital heart disease together, every story is very different. And that's kind of the power in running a workshop, that you're just asking them to tell a story about their congenital heart experience. And there's so many experiences that all of us have at any given time. And so each person chose something that was meaningful for them, and then we built the stories around it. And I know now you have them up on WCCHN's patient stories section of the website, so people can go and see some of these stories. You can also find them on my website, but all of these stories are public because the storytellers gave permission once the stories were done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was great that you've got your 6 storytellers, and then what you guys were able to do is actually build out an actual unveiling of these videos. So I was actually able to come out to the in-person and online screenings that you had, where the stories premiered last fall, and it was a great experience that clearly showed that storytelling is important, both for those who have CHD and the CHD community, and those who don't even know about it to learn about it. So. Sort of a next question is through this whole process, and now with the screenings, was there any unexpected benefits that came to light, or are there any specific stories that you can share that are sort of going to help describe and let everyone know about what were the impact that these stories had and will continue to have?
Absolutely. So as part of the workshop, we actually do a screening with just the storytellers before we introduce the videos to anybody else, because it's pretty vulnerable to tell a story about your own life and then share it publicly. So we kind of set it up so that you have your own little screening, so we get to see each other's stories, the finished product. So that happened in the spring, and then we did the in-person and virtual screenings. And I think the feedback in each of those cases was, there were family and friends of the storytellers, there were healthcare professionals, there were people from across Canada and the United States that were coming to the virtual one. And what they can learn from a single story is incredible. So we had some quotes that people were typing into the chat. You know how we're doing, I'm looking
Yeah.
for them, I'm sorry. As we're talking about the story, and as we're talking about what resonated out of the story, because that's a really important part of digital storytelling. Watching the video was one part of it, but then the conversation that comes up after. So people were writing, and I want to highlight Vittorio's story because he was part of this pitch. And it just said, one of the people said, I want to thank you for pointing out that in healthcare, we don't do a good job of building people the tools for what is coming. And I'm glad you had your people there to give you that. So that was an incredible comment from a healthcare provider, recognizing, like, through a story that they learned that there are things we can do to support more than just the medical side. Another person wrote, your story reminds me that it takes a village for any of us to walk the path called life. I'm so glad you had such a strong support system around you. And another one said, thank you for sharing. As a transplant mom, I can only hope my son will be the adult you were at the age of 18. And so Vittorio's story was about getting the call for a transplant and turning it down. So heart transplant, it's ready. He's 18 and they call with his heart ready to go. And his parents were out of the country and he didn't feel like he was going to be able to do it at that time. And so you'll have to watch the story to find out what happens.
Sure.
But it's just incredible to see, like, the comments that we got, because we also shared that story. Christina and I presented at Children's Healthcare Canada recently, and we presented this workshop and shared Vittorio's story as well as Maddie's story. And Maddie's story is about growing up with congenital heart disease. Hers is the one that we kind of referred to as feeling lucky about something. When someone said that to her, that triggered her. And so sharing those stories at Children's Healthcare Canada, there was a lot of feedback from family partners and researchers about just Vittorio's story starts with this phone ringing, and it's really jarring. And the way that you can use not just your voice to tell the story, but images to support the story and sound effects and the music all bring this together to help share that story. So if you had put Vittorio on stage to tell that story, it could be really long. It's a long story, but when you work with digital storytelling, you're condensing it into a 2 to 4 minute movie, and you're supporting the storyteller at the same time that you're doing that.
And one of the things I wanted to say was each one of the stories that we were able to produce, there was something really universal about them. So when we did share them at Children's Healthcare Canada, it was practitioners and researchers and family members from all across Canada with all different sorts of backgrounds. But what was relatable was the emotion, the intensity, and that despite the different diagnoses and so on, is that that emotion that comes along with dealing with medical complexities or having those big decisions, and how your illness or disease may touch every facet of your life, is acknowledging that and how that can impact you. So even though that we were focused on adults with congenital heart disease, every story that came out of it was a different space in their life, and can be relatable to a lot of different populations. So I think that was really interesting for me to see, was that even though we were looking at one specific disease, it was applicable and relevant to so many people.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and for updating us on your project. Just so everyone's aware, we at the WCCHN, as Christy had mentioned, we do have these digital stories on our website under patient stories. Christy, where can they find them on your website?
So through my website, right at the top banner, it says Linktree, and you'll be able to find the digital story links that way. You can also look under digital storytelling.
Okay, and we'll probably throw those website links into the chat just in case anybody else wants them. But since I've got Christy and Christina here, and you're on the stage again with our heart community, is there any sort of last minute words or any encouragement that you want to give to everybody since you're here?
Tell more stories. Tell more stories, but not just patients and families, physicians, healthcare workers. There's so many experiences that go across all of what we're doing that we can learn from each other. And I think that storytelling piece is really one way to do that. And it shares so much in a short amount of time.
And thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to work with these adults to produce these stories. And I hope that, you know, the influence that these stories will have will definitely be felt through the next generation of heart warriors that we have.